G'day folks, I've got all 8 pistons in. So we've got all the bottom end all assembled, the rotating assembly all done. I ended up doing the piston myself. What's happened is the pistons have around 12 thousandths sort of taken off this part here when the machine shop originally dummied up the 355 stroker, because the deck has had, over the years, it's probably, well, it was out to 60 thousandths, and then we re-sleeved it, so that brought us back, well, we ended up boring it back out to 30 thousandths over. And the trouble is this block may have had 2, 3, 4 rebuilds. Well, probably at least, 2 or 3, who knows. But the deck has been machined over the years. And what happened was, when he did a mock-up originally with the crank and with these pistons, it was sticking out of the top of the deck slightly, a few thou. I think it was 3 or 4 thou. And so what he's ended up doing is straightening up the deck again to get it nice and true and even on each end, but he's had to take off around 12 thou off the piston, off this part here, to get it sort of back. It feels, when I put a feeler gauge on it, when it's on top dead, it's around 5, maybe 6 thousandths down the ball when I do my checks. Well, this one, because we bought a new piston, was sticking out, it was sticking out around 5 or 6 thousandths out of the ball. So we needed to take off roughly around 12 thousandths to match the rest of the pistons. Well, I had it in my mind, guys, that I was going to take it to the machine shop, but I got playing around with the piston, and I've ended up sanding it back, and I've done an absolutely incredible, beautiful job of it. It's not that hard. I wasn't going to show the video on it, guys. I did post some pictures up on Instagram showing, just a couple of snaps on what I was what I was doing, and one guy commented and said, "You're going to do a vid on it." Well, I never ended up doing a vid on it, because I thought, and I still reckon a lot of you guys would probably cringe doing that, but I felt very comfortable doing it, and it's come up perfect. I've weighted the piston, so we're in around within a gram. Well, I've actually got it back to, with the rod on it and the bearing in it, it was 1,012 before I worked on it. I measured a couple of other pistons and they were 1,007. So I've had to take 5 grams out of it, but that's what it's worked out, guys. When you remove material back to that correct deck height, I actually used a feeler gauge in the dish part here to make sure I was on the money compared to the other pistons, and I ended up bringing it in the same weight, and it ended up working beautiful. So I was very, very happy with it at the end of the day, and about an hour's worth of work fluffing around doing it, so it's come up like a treat. I'll show you what I did. I've got that old piston out there, and I'll just give you a quick run through on what I've done to achieve the results I have. So very, very happy. Alright, what I've done here, this is 80 grit, so it's fairly aggressive, and I've got it sort of strapped out, clamped down reasonably tight, the sheet of paper, and all I've gone and done, I had the rod on it when I was doing the other piston, and I've just gone really slow and just took my time until I got the desired surface material needed to take off. Every time I do sort of 15-20 strokes, I'd get the feeler gauge, and that was the same off the other piston. I ended up checking them 3 sort of points, and I was very mindful that this was a lot more material here, so I had to sort of keep the weight fairly well over that part so we could sort of get an even you know, sort of even wear mark on it on the way down. And like I said, it didn't take that long. Then I ended up going to, once I got the desired height that I was happy with and the weight that I was happy with, I ended up going to 150 grit. Then from there I went to, what's that, 320, and then I finished off with 1000 and 800 grit. I went to 800. Then I just had a little scrap piece of paper and I just went around this edge because it sort of got reasonably sharp once I'd take that sort of tiny little radius off. I worked on it. I done around the edge of the piston too. So I sort of got that nice tiny little bit of radius back again, and yeah, achieved the height that I needed. Bloody happy with it. So look, it could be wrong. It's not a good way of doing it, but it got me out of trouble, guys. It really did, and it got me the height that I desired, and I was really happy with the end result. I wouldn't go doing 8 pistons. If I was desperate and no one would do it, you'd have to do it. But as 1 piston, yeah, I was quite comfortable to do that. So there you go, guys. That's how I did it. All right, well, there you go. So we got ourselves out of trouble with that one. So, like I said, very happy. Well, my next phase will be camshaft install. I'll see if I can set the camera up, and you know, we'll just do a little install on the camshaft. I've got all my lifters in position, so I know that's the front of the motor, and they're all in. They're going to ride, each lifter will ride on the same lobe as before, so we don't get them mixed up. And I'll put the cam chain, which we run a double row chain, and it's an actual Roll Master. That's the brand, a Roll Master, and we'll put the sprocket on, and we'll go from there. Alright guys, this is what I use, just some assembly lube. I'll put it on the bearing, on the journal of the camshaft, and what I'll do, I'll put some on the lobes, but I'll do it when it's in the in the motor. I won't bother, it just gets too messy. I can actually drip a little bit down onto it. I can put some on the lifters. I mean, this cam's already bedded in, so I'm not stressing over it. This is really good stuff. It's really sticky. Look. And it just hangs on. So I find this is really nice on bearings. And I put a little bit in the pump gears too, on the pump. I use this, and it worked really well for priming the pump. So the oil pump, so we can draw from the pickup. I don't go too crazy with it. I mean, because I'm going to prime this engine, guys, remember? I'm going to do that accumulator trick again. That's a really good little trick. Prime up my accumulator, put some pressure in it, and flood about 1 litre of oil through the engine. I just hand feed it in, guys. Look, I'm no pro. I'm just having a go. There's special tools that you can do this with. I just take my time. Chair up. Oh, back's still a little bit tender. but it is improving. It's getting a lot better. That's a little bit tricky there. I'll put a little screwdriver or something on the end. There we go. Beautiful. That's beautiful, guys. Exactly what we wanted. Nice. Very happy. Alright. Sticky stuff. Alright, well next I've got a little retaining bracket to put on. And that goes on here. Find that. Here we go. Now this is interesting. This has actually got a hole in it. This actually screws into the right side oil galley. Alright? And they've got a tiny little hole in that. And that's, I think, just to help lubricate the camshaft chain, the cam chain. Little trick they reckon is to block the hole. I've punched it. I did it years ago. Oh, not years ago. Well, yeah, I did. This is actually my old one. I did this years ago. And it's just a leak point to me. If you can, reduce leaks in your oiling system, to me that's a good thing. Because you don't really want to send oil where you don't want to send oil at the end of the day. So. And this thing does two things. Holds the camshaft in, locates it, and it stops this from popping up. But because it's turning that way, it'll always stay down. But for whatever reason, if it backfires and wants to run back the other way, well, that little thing there will stop it from coming out. So there you go, sits in there like that. I put a bit of Loctite on it last time, and I think I may do the same thing this time. Don't talk it up too crazy, but a bit of Loctite always helps. You don't want that bolt coming loose. You've got to remember too, guys, because you've got the sump down in here, the timing case, you're going to get oil splashed around in here like crazy all the time. So lubrication for the chain isn't an issue. Well, as far as I believe anyway. They used to have another little down here. If you can't, yeah, I've capped that off. I've put a little BSP fitting in there and bunged that off. There was actually a little thing come out and there was another little outlet to lube up the chain. So I got rid of that as well. The idea is we just keep the oil to where we want it. It's just little things like that, guys. I can't really see it, but it's high strength, high temperature. Don't need much on it. Yes, it's exciting, guys. Switching over to E85. I'm not going to swap out my fuel lines for now. I'm going to do some testing. So when I get a chance, within the next week, I've got some actual line up there. I'm going to cut a little bit off it, and I want to do a little bit of testing. You've got to remember, guys, every time I bring this car back from the track, I'm going to drain the fuel. So we're not going to have any issues, and even if I just run a little bit of pump fuel through it, put a litre in it and fire it up and just let the carby sit with a bit of pump fuel in it. But it's not going to sit with E85 in it while I'm not using it. That's what I'm sort of getting at. So I think, my fuel line should be right. Eventually, yes, if I have issues with it. But from what I'm reading, it's a lot of people are running the rubber, the Series 100 lines. So, but I hear other stories, people saying no. So I'm going to test it. I'm going to learn and test it. There's no doubt I've got to modify the carby to suit. I might put a little bit on that actually. I might use the old torque. Doesn't need too much. Put 50 pound on it. Actually, I might put a little bit more. It didn't feel that much. I'll go 55. Because it's been torqued. It's been yeah, that doesn't feel that tight, 50 pound, 55. Actually, to tell you the truth, I've never torqued it, but I feel that's not enough. I've usually just gone by feel with those. Yeah, that's tight enough. That's enough. Don't want too much. It's about 60 pound. That's heaps. All right, we've got the sprocket locator, or whatever you want to call it. Now this is quite easy to time up. We know we're at number 1. And we've got to line the dots up. We've got a dot here, and we've got a dot. Where are we? It's a 0 mark down there. So when I put the chain on, we've got 2 marks. There we go. You'll see them there. We've got a mark there and a mark there. It's like, I think it might be even a copper looking link. But anyway, we've got 2 marks. So what we do, I'll get down on my knees for that one, guys. First things first, I think we ought to put it on the I don't bother degreeing this camshaft in. It's just set up on 0. I think there you go. I think that's, for me, that's the there we go, we're on the 0 mark. Turn the camera around a little bit. Come down a little bit more. So there's a 0 mark down on the bottom here. It's on 0 there on the keyway. And we're on the money. You really can't. It'll only go one way. I mean, it's not as if it's you can be 180 out. As long as you get it on the mark there. There we go. And turn the cam around. There we go. Look at that. So we're on our 0 mark there, and we're on the mark here. It's always on this side, and I know from previously doing it, I've probably done a dozen times, that the 0 mark is around 5 o'clock for the little mark in the chain. And there, so that's it. You're on number 1, which is top dead centre. It's pretty close. And that's that. I like to put a little bit of Loctite again on this. I'll nip that up. I'll put around. I'll read up on the spec on that one actually, but I'd like to know what that one is. And actually, I'd like to know what the other one is. But there's a bit of Loctite on it. This is the actual cam for the old fuel pump. So when you've had the fuel pump, you'll have a leg come out, and this rides off the fuel pump because it's a cam, and it pumps the fuel. So that's what that is. You could probably do away with it, but I'll leave it on there. I mean, not do away with it, but you could probably modify it a little bit, but why bother? It seems it's no issue. Like I said, a little bit of Loctite on it just to keep it snugged up. And that's it for the cam installation. It's pretty easy. It's a good setup, double row. I've never heard of really any fails unless you get into some crazy camshaft lifts and huge spring pressures. I have heard of people going over to rubber belts, but a good double row timing chain is all I ever need. It's never let me down. It's been brilliant. Alright guys, well there you go. That's that little phase of the build. The next one, I'll put the sump on. That'll be my next thing. Well, the timing case, sorry, then the sump. And we might do a video on the heads. So that's sort of the next one. We'll drop the lifters in, and we'll do all the valve training. Alright guys, well I'm hoping you enjoyed the little video so far. Don't be too hard on me over my little piston. It's a little bit backyardy, but it did a good job. I'm very happy with it guys. I really like doing stuff myself. And that's what it's all about guys, is just having a real crack and learning to do everything as much as possible myself. Because that's where I get huge satisfaction. Alright guys, I'll pop one up soon. Catch you later.